Hi class, this is your instructor Megan, and in this video I want to talk about choosing a topic for your research paper. Before I talk about choosing a topic, however, I think we need to back up and just talk a little bit more about what research papers are and what they are not. It may have been a while since you've written a research paper. So a research paper, first of all, is made of primary and secondary sources. This is very important. Primary sources are sources of original research. So if I were to conduct research by creating some fake Facebook profiles and using them in an experiment to see how people respond to them, that would be primary research, and the primary research would be published in a paper with my name on it explaining how I did the research and what I found. That's primary, and you're mostly going to find primary research in academic journals. Secondary sources are sources that use that primary research and use the research to either compare and contrast with other research studies or provide an analysis of that research. So secondary sources are written by people who didn't do the original research, but they're commenting on it based on their own professional knowledge or their own research. So the further you get away from primary, the more you tend to get into opinion territory. So if you find a blog from someone who works in the social media field and they're sort of talking about their experiences with social media, that's not really research. It's not a secondary source either because they're not commenting on original research. So that would not be appropriate for a research paper. What's interesting about research papers is that your thesis statement, which you're going to write this week, is going to grow and change as your research moves forward. So what you're going to do is you're going to start by asking a question about images, and then you're going to try to find the answer. And as you look for the answer, your understanding of the answer is going to change. You may come across an answer that you never thought you would be giving. So this week you're going to provide to me a thesis statement. It's okay if it changes throughout the semester. And I'll give you an example. I had a student in another class on social media who asked the question, the research question, what is the effect of citizen journalism on professional journalism? Great question. And his original thesis statement, the first week that he turned it in, was that citizen journalism is damaging to professional journalists for many reasons. And because of that, professional journalists should actively discourage citizens from trying to do journalism. And the more research he did, the more he found that citizen journalism is actually a net positive for professional journalists. So by the end of the semester, his thesis statement had changed, completely flip-flopped, to citizen journalism is a benefit to professional journalists, and professional journalists should try to foster citizen journalism and use the outputs of citizen journalism. So a complete change, and that's totally okay. Your grade in this paper is not based on your ability to stick to one thesis doggedly, even if you're wrong. It's based on your ability to understand the research, interpret the research, and arrive at a solid, logical conclusion. So research papers also further the field in which they are written. So you have to be able to provide a unique analysis that compares all of the research and kind of says, hey, based on all this research, here's how we should look at this phenomenon, and here's what we should do in the future. So research papers are not just a summary of what's known about a topic. You are going to write one of those. It's going to be called your literature review. That's a summary of what we already know. But beyond that, you're going to have to provide an analysis of that and make a prediction or a suggestion for the future. So in the citizen journalism example, the prediction or suggestion was that professional journalists who embrace citizen journalism will actually do better, that they will benefit from that. And so journalists should embrace and foster citizen journalism. Research papers are not just your opinions. If you ever write I in your paper, you'll notice I will immediately comment on it and say, I don't care what you think. I know that you're writing the paper. I don't need you to say I in it. And you're providing an analysis, not an opinion. So your analysis arises from the research. Your opinion just comes out of thin air. If you can't support what you're saying with research, it's probably an opinion, and I don't really care about your opinion. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but in academic work, opinions don't matter. Opinions are not based on anything. In my opinion, orange is the superior color to blue, but it's not based on anything except my personal preference. So my opinion, it's not important. It's not academic in any way. It's not based on research. Research papers do draw on what others have to say about a topic, and they do what's called engaging the sources. So you're going to have to engage the sources. As you create your annotated bibliography, you're going to read sources and you're going to write summaries of them, and then you're going to start comparing and contrasting them. So you're going to sort of figure out, hey, there's one argument that Google makes us stupid, but there's another argument that it actually makes us smarter. So there's really two sides to this debate, and you're going to engage those sources against each other and explain why they each support their own theory and what their theory means and why they are competing. There's two types of research paper, analytical and argumentative. Analytical research papers create a literature review, a summary of the research, and then propose some way of looking at it. So a good example would be The Great Gatsby. I can read The Great Gatsby and I can summarize all kinds of opinions, well, perspectives on The Great Gatsby, people who say, you know, it's a story of youth, or it's a story of foolishness, or it's a story of longing, or it does sum up the generation of the 20s, or it does not accurately reflect the 20s. I can look at all that and I can explain those arguments, and then I can provide my own analytical interpretation and say, you know what, the people who side with it does explain the 20s are more correct. Argumentative papers are all about persuasion. So you're not going to have a lit review that summarizes research. You're just going to start out by saying, I think that, you know, this should happen and here's my evidence for it. And you're going to present all the research as evidence. So in analytical research papers, which is what you're doing in this class, you do need to look at the research and then analyze it. So you're going to start by asking a question on which you haven't taken a stance. So a question like, what is the role of depictions of women in the media? What is the effect of depictions of women in the media? Or what is the effect of Photoshop in images used popularly to promote and market? You might look into this question. What happens in a society where most images are presented having been altered? Does it skew how people believe the world really is? And the intent here is not necessarily to persuade. It's not to say, hey, we should ban Photoshop. But it's to sort of say, based on what we're seeing, you know, this is the effect Photoshopped images are having on society, and as a result, you know, it seems like it's only going to get worse, or there's people who are trying to fight it, and here's what they're doing, and they may or may not be successful. So you're giving more of an analysis. You're not just starting by persuading. An argumentative paper would start by saying, the first paragraph would say, Photoshop should be banned, and then it would explain it. An analytical paper is going to start by saying, hey, there's a lot of questions about the role of Photoshop in shaping society. And then it's going to explain what Photoshop is and what it's being used for and what people believe it's doing and what it's actually doing. And it's going to take a more analytical stance. Argumentative research papers, on the other hand, of course, they're just trying to persuade, so they're going to start by just saying, this should happen, or you should believe this. So if we look at thesis statements for these two types of research paper, and again, remember, you are completing an analytical paper. Let's say we ask the question, what is the role, or what is the effect of internet video technologies on traditional TV networks? Well, in an analytical thesis, you would say something like the increase of TV capabilities online, so video capabilities, means the internet is a threat to TV networks. It is having an effect. But also it's going to make a prediction or a suggestion. So TV networks should embrace internet channels. And that's going to be built on research. You're going to find as much research as you can about what TV networks are doing. Are TV networks who are embracing the internet more successful or less successful than those that are not? So that prediction or statement suggestion has to be based on evidence. So it's a little bit argumentative in nature. The argumentative paper is just going to start by saying TV networks should abandon cable and use the internet. So let's get rid of cable, let's get rid of all that stuff, let's get rid of Comcast, and let's use the internet and figure out a new way of doing it. So the process for this paper is you're going to select a research question, you're going to conduct the research, and your thesis statement may change while you're doing that. You're going to organize what is known about the topic, and you're going to write that up in your literature review, and then you're going to identify what is not known. So we do know that Photoshop has this effect on certain things, but what we don't know is blank. And then you're going to make a prediction or a suggestion about what we don't know based on research. So what does the research suggest? Then you're going to write your paper. So as far as choosing a topic, oops, this one still says social media. Ask a research question about images. So look through the course folders. You'll see issues like images and culture, different cultures, images and communication, the effect of image manipulation. As a journalist, one question I have is whether people really understand photo illustrations. A lot of publications use what's called photo illustrations, and those are photos that have been manipulated. I'm not sure most people understand what a photo illustration is. I have had a lot of experience with people expressing confusion about it in the past, so I might ask the question, what is the effect of using photo illustrations on journalistic communication? So this should relate to your major or career or something that you're interested in, and it should be something for which we don't really know what we ought to do yet, or we don't really know the answer. So maybe I can find research that shows people really don't understand photo illustrations, but then I need to suggest something. So if that's the case, what do I suggest? That they should be taken out of the journalist toolbox? Or should I suggest maybe that they are labeled differently? I'll have to come up with something based on the evidence. That's everything I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions about choosing a topic or you want to run a research question by me, feel free to reach out and I'd be glad to take a look.